Welcome to the Corporate Sagas podcast. Today, we are going to jump into the world of the Matrix.
All right.
And pull out some really thought-provoking ideas about reality, our beliefs, the choices that we make each and every day. You know, you've given us some really good material here.
Absolutely.
Including video scripts that really analyze the movie's core concepts.
Yep.
And a really comprehensive article from CBR that kind of gives us a full picture of the Matrix universe and all the deep meanings.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. You know, you're talking about a movie that came out over 20 years ago.
Right.
And still has so much relevance today.
Yeah.
So yeah, our mission today is to explore these sources.
Okay.
Together to extract the most insightful takeaways.
Yeah.
And understand why this movie from the late 90s continues to spark these conversations and challenge our perceptions.
For sure.
We'll be navigating ideas like questioning what we take for granted, spotting the hidden forces that shape our lives, taking control of our own minds, and carving out our unique paths.
That sounds like a plan.
All viewed through the lens of the Matrix.
Through the lens of the Matrix. I like it. And these sources that you gave us really tackle all of these things. You know, we've got Red Pill Your Life, which tackles questioning assumptions. We've got Decoding the Code on recognizing those underlying patterns. We have Hacking Your Reality, which focuses on mind control, and The Glitch in the System, which really explores individuality.
Yep.
And then that deep dive article from CBR giving us a full kind of Matrix story, philosophy, narrative, and why it's really stuck with us culturally for so long.
Exactly. It covers all the bases.
Yeah, so let's jump in. And I think the perfect place to jump in is that iconic moment, you know, taking the red pill. What does that mean to you?
You know, it's funny because the Red Pill Your Life video, I think, really highlights that. You know, it's interesting how it mirrors those micro decisions that we make about what information we accept and what we question.
Sure.
You know, it's like every day we're bombarded with these narratives, you know, everything from the news to social media.
Oh, yeah.
And each piece of information kind of presents us with a choice.
Right.
Do we just swallow it whole, or do we stop and say, wait a minute, is this really the truth? Is this actually what's going on here?
Right. So you're constantly being given the choice of the red pill or the blue pill.
Exactly.
Every single day. Which I think is such a great, you know, analogy and metaphor for just life in general.
Yeah. And it really emphasizes that simple act of challenging your assumptions.
Right.
Not just blindly accepting what's presented to you. It's about asking those really fundamental questions like, why? And what if?
Right.
And it sounds easy, but in our everyday lives, in the hustle and bustle, how often do we really stop and say, wait a minute, what are the beliefs that I'm operating under here?
Exactly.
And are they actually serving me?
Right.
So I think that's a really powerful takeaway.
Yeah. And if we kind of go from there and we jump to a more philosophical level, you know, the CBR article talks about that brain in a vat thought experiment.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a very
Classic.
It's a
Predates the Matrix by centuries.
For sure.
This idea. But it basically asks us to consider if our brains are the sole source of our reality. And if our brains could be stimulated to experience this completely fabricated world, how would we ever know the difference?
Right.
And the Matrix kind of takes that abstract thought and gives it this really tangible form and shows us how easy our perception of reality could be manipulated if somebody wanted to do that.
Exactly. And it's not just this kind of far out science fiction concept. I mean, think about the societal expectations that we internalize, you know? The sheer volume of information that we're exposed to, particularly on social media.
And those algorithms.
The algorithms,
that are curating our feeds and
those
everything.
That curate our feeds, exactly.
I mean, we're living in a world where we're constantly being bombarded with information, and it's very easy to just sort of go along with the flow.
Right.
And not really question what's going on.
Right.
And then our own limiting beliefs can even kind of act as these invisible walls and create these kind of personal matrix, even if it's not a literal computer simulation, right?
I love that, the personal matrix. It's so true.
It's like our own little bubble that we create for ourselves.
So I think it's really interesting if people take a moment and think about some of the things that they currently just accept as the way things are.
The status quo.
What are those narratives that they've inherited or absorbed without really kind of dissecting them at all?
Yeah, and Red Pill Your Life suggests a really practical approach for that.
Okay.
And that's seeking out diverse perspectives.
Right.
Don't just rely on your usual sources of information.
Right.
Get out there and understand different points of view. That's a really powerful first step, I think.
Okay, so we're questioning things. We've taken that first step, right?
Okay.
Next step, decoding the code. This is where we start to see the underlying structure.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep, the patterns start to emerge.
The patterns start to emerge.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating is that parallel between Neo, right?
Okay.
And how he learns to perceive the underlying code of the Matrix.
Right, those green characters.
Exactly, like those green streams of data.
Yeah.
Versus our ability to identify those hidden patterns and systems that are operating in our own world.
Right.
And the video script mentions things like social media algorithms, political systems, economic structures.
Right.
These are complex frameworks that can really impact our lives.
Absolutely.
And it's important to be aware of them.
Yeah, and once you start to kind of see those lines of code, you can begin to understand how those systems function, right? And the video highlights that one of the key benefits of this pattern recognition is that you can start to identify manipulation tactics.
Absolutely.
Think about how information is presented online.
Yeah.
The way these narratives are constructed.
In the media.
In the media, everywhere.
Everywhere, exactly.
So, by recognizing these patterns, you're much better equipped to make an informed decision.
Right.
And to not just be swept along with the
You're
current
just blindly following the herd.
Right, exactly. And decoding the code goes a step further and suggests that understanding these patterns isn't just about protecting yourself, right, from these negative influences. It's about empowering yourself to create positive change.
Okay.
So if you can identify those root causes of certain systemic issues,
Right.
then you're in a much better position to actually work towards those solutions.
It gives you a sense of agency. You're not just passively observing anymore.
Okay.
You understand the rules of the game, and you can actually influence them.
So, we are questioning reality.
Okay.
We are spotting the patterns.
Yeah.
Now we need to talk about taking control of our minds. Hacking your reality really delves into this aspect.
Yeah, I think one of the most insightful things in hacking your reality is this concept of being stuck in a mental loop.
Sure.
That feeling of being trapped by your own thoughts.
Yeah.
Those negative thought patterns, the limiting beliefs, and even just self-defeating behavior. And the video really draws this direct analogy to being stuck in the Matrix.
Okay.
Unable to break free from that simulated reality.
Right, like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're replaying the same scenario
over and over
in your head, falling into the same patterns.
And I think we've all experienced that in our lives, right?
We all have those moments, absolutely.
Where you feel like, man, I'm just battling the same demons.
Or getting tripped up by the same insecurities.
Yeah.
And so the video introduces this idea of hacking your reality, which sounds very much like the Matrix. But at its core, it's about consciously taking control of your thought processes to rewrite those limiting internal narratives. That's kind of the key here, right?
Yeah, it really highlights that incredible power of our minds. How our thoughts shape our perceptions, how they influence our actions, and ultimately are how they determine our experiences in life.
Absolutely.
So the video offers these very practical steps, right?
Okay.
For hacking your reality. And the first step is to identify those really deep-seated beliefs, those limiting beliefs, and then consciously replacing them with more positive and empowering ones.
Right, and it's not just about positive thinking.
No.
Although I think that plays a role, right?
Absolutely.
It's also about mindfulness.
Yes.
Which is cultivating a present moment awareness of your thoughts.
Being in the now.
Being in the now.
Without judgment.
Without judgment.
Exactly.
And I think that's such a key step. And visualizing success.
Yes.
Taking inspired action.
Yes.
That's aligned with your goals and your values. Surrounding yourself with positivity.
Yeah.
These are all kind of tools to regain control of your mental landscape.
Exactly. It's like you're taking back the reins of your own mind.
So let me ask you this. What are some of the internal code?
Oh, yeah.
Those automatic negative thoughts or limiting beliefs that you're ready to rewrite in your own life? What mental patterns are you consciously choosing to challenge and overcome?
Yeah, that's a great question to ask yourself.
Yeah, it is.
And then from there, we move on to the glitch in the system.
Right, so we're questioning.
Yes.
We are decoding, we're hacking our minds.
Yeah.
The final piece of the puzzle from these video scripts is about finding our unique path.
Finding your own way.
Finding your own way, yeah, which is explored in the glitch in the system. And what's really interesting in the glitch in the system is this idea of these anomalies, these individuals within the matrix who didn't really fit the program.
Right.
And they point out that these glitches were actually crucial to the possibility of breaking free from the system.
Interesting.
And it draws this parallel to our own society, where we feel this pressure to conform, to follow that predetermined path, to fit in, to not rock the boat.
You know, it's funny. It's like we're all kind of given these molds that we're expected to fit into, but what if our natural shapes doesn't quite match?
And I think that's the question that the video poses. Like, what if your uniqueness, those things that make you different, are actually your greatest strengths?
Right.
And the key to fulfilling your own unique purpose.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, embracing your individuality isn't about rebelling just for the sake of it.
Right.
It's about unlocking your potential and living in alignment with your true self.
It's about finding that authentic self.
Exactly. So the script gives some really valuable guidance on how to actually do that.
Okay.
And it starts with exploring your passions.
Right.
Those things that really excite you and make you feel alive. And challenging those societal norms. Don't be afraid to step outside that box.
For sure.
And then embrace those differences.
Yeah.
You know, recognize that your perspectives and experiences are valuable assets.
Right.
You know, and then connecting with your inner self. You know, through things like meditation or spending time in nature.
Yeah.
Those can help to bring you back to center.
Yeah.
And then taking risks, calculated risks, of course, to get outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to embracing what makes you you.
Right.
And not being afraid to lean into that.
Yeah.
Even if it means diverging from that well-trodden path.
So now let's move from there and let's kind of shift our focus.
Right.
And let's talk about the narrative and the underlying mechanics of The Matrix, the movie itself.
Yeah.
And this is where the CBR article really kind of shines, you know?
Yeah. Right. Goes into great detail.
It really gives a clear picture of the literal Matrix.
Yes, it does.
As this incredibly detailed digital world.
Yeah.
Virtually indistinguishable from the real world of the late 20th century.
And the key is that it wasn't just a game.
Right.
It was a persistent, immersive reality.
Right.
Where plugged-in humans live their entire lives.
Right.
Completely oblivious to the real truth.
So why this elaborate deception? And initially, the movie presents this explanation of humans being used as a power source for the machines who had lost their traditional sources of energy.
Right.
But the article also points out an alternative theory.
Yeah.
That the Matrix was designed to harness that collective processing power of human brains.
That's a scary thought.
It is a scary thought, right?
Yeah.
And so I think regardless of the reason, the fundamental goal was to maintain control over humanity.
Yeah, for sure.
While keeping them blissfully ignorant. So, you know, who are these beings, or what are these things that are controlling and maintaining the Matrix?
Well, the article gives a really good explanation.
Okay.
You've got the architect who's kind of the primary programmer and the overseer.
Okay.
Essentially representing the machine intelligence.
Yeah.
And he's responsible for the design and evolution of the Matrix. And what we see in the movies is actually the third iteration.
Wow.
So there's been a process of trial and error in finding that optimal level of control.
Right.
And interestingly, the first two versions, one was a utopia and the other was a dystopia.
Yeah.
But both were deemed unstable.
Wow.
Due to the unpredictable nature of humanity.
Right.
Humans just didn't fit neatly into those boxes.
Right. Humans are a little too chaotic.
Yeah, we like to shake things up a little bit.
Exactly.
And the Oracle played a pretty crucial role in the design of this third version.
Right.
You know, this more stable version.
Right.
And she introduced this element of choice, giving humans a subconscious option to accept or reject the simulated reality. And then, of course, you've got the one, Neo, who's unknowingly playing this part in the architect's system of control before Morpheus shows up.
Right.
And ultimately, Neo's journey leads to some pretty significant changes in that whole dynamic.
Dynamic between humans and machines.
Exactly.
And it's not just a matter of unplugging.
No, not at all.
Individuals have to develop an awareness of the illusion.
Right, they have to see the truth.
And a willingness to accept what is a pretty harsh reality.
Exactly, it's not a comfortable awakening.
It is not a comfortable awakening.
No.
And then they make a point that younger individuals, perhaps less entrenched in the simulated reality, tend to adapt more readily to the shock.
Yeah, they haven't been plugged in as long.
They haven't been plugged in as long.
So they haven't formed as many of those attachments and expectations.
Yeah, it's almost like, the older you get, the more set in your ways you are.
Exactly. It's harder to let go of those preconceived notions.
This idea of being trapped within a system that doesn't align with your true identity.
Right, and that struggle for liberation, which deeply resonates with people who don't conform to societal norms. This idea of living a double life. This stark contrast between the presented reality and the hidden truth.
The hidden truth.
Yeah. And then you have the Wachowskis' own transitions. Which occurred after the films, which adds this whole other layer of meaning to this idea of identity. And challenging these realities that we create for ourselves. And then finally, the article touches on the Matrix Resurrections. And they introduced this concept of Neo in Trinity as a binary system.
Oh, wow.
Or the one.
Wow.
Emphasizing their connection and the very fabric of the Matrix itself as this binary code.
It's almost like their individual strength and their bond together really represents this fundamental element that can disrupt or even transcend those limitations.
It's like they hold the key to breaking free from the system.
So, we come to a close here with this deep dive. And it's clear how the Matrix gives us this framework for examining the nature of our own reality.
Absolutely.
The often invisible forces that shape our lives, our capacity for self-determination, and the importance of embracing those unique selves.
And the deeper narrative reveals that complex and multi-layered system.
Absolutely.
That's designed to maintain that control.
It really gives you a lot to think about.
It does. It really does.
So we encourage you to reflect on these ideas.
Yes.
Consider those red pill moments in your own life. Those instances where you've chosen to question the accepted norms. And think about the code that you might be starting to recognize in the systems and the beliefs around you.
Yeah, what's sparking for you as you're listening to this? What insights are coming up?
That's right. And share your thoughts and opinions in the comments.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you.
We would love to hear it resonates with you.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us on this deep dive into these really fascinating sources.
So as you kind of go about your day, consider this. What aspects of your own life do you perceive as the most constructed? And what power do you believe you possess to actually redefine those things?
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Corporate Sagas podcast.